This is AV SuperFriends On Topic, a 30-minute monthly roundtable focused on a single topic. This discussion will be opinionated, to the point, and saturated with our well-known blend of painfully won expertise and deeply ingrained immaturity. For August 2021, it's the AV SuperFriends On Topic. Welcome back, everybody. Time for another, well, I was about to say time for another Friday afternoon. It is not Friday afternoon. We're recording this on a Wednesday afternoon because it's summer and things go weird on us and schedules change. So you're not going to hear this till next week anyway, so it doesn't matter. My name is Chris Dector. I'm joined today by Justin, Larry, Mark, and Jamie. And today's topic, this month's topic is back to school, back in action. We're all returning back to normal. Everything's the same as it was once before. It is again, and so forth and so on.
Go buy new clothes. You're going to need them for back to school.
It's time for back to school shopping.
Awkward pictures taken in front of the house.
Pencils and trapper keepers. Yep, exactly.
I'm going to put every book I own in the tiny backpack so I can go out and wait for the school bus, just like my big brother. That's how it goes every year back to school. So on today's show, we're going to discuss this fall's top help desk ticket that you don't know is coming, but we do, and we're going to tell you what it is, and we're going to tell you how to be ready for it. And we're also going to talk about some things to look out for this fall as students and instructors return to campus, and kind of how to be prepped for that. But first, let's do some news. So I pulled an article here. I hope you've all looked at this. This article is from Campus Technology titled, "How the Pandemic Changed Higher Ed's Priorities for Online Learning." And this one I think was notable because A, it wasn't a novel, so that's nice. But B, it was basically results of a survey that was asked of 400 plus colleges and universities, and questions kind of like, hey, with the pandemic going on, with how things currently are operating, are you changing your approach to online learning in general, whatever that might mean? But are you changing that? And of course, the logical response is, well, yes.
Had to,
but
no choice.
I thought a couple things were interesting here was that 33% responded that they are expanding their online courses, which I find to be, these numbers seem low to me. I would think that would be closer to 100% are somehow expanding their online courses, but depends, I suppose, how they ask the question. 24% are making online a priority. Again, seems kind of low. I found this one interesting. 17% are increasing the flexibility of their courses, but specifically because that's being driven by student demand. I think that, again, seems really low because I think all the demand is coming from students for flexibility. The ability to take some classes online, some classes in person, that's all being driven by the students. And the most surprising one, 9%, so just 9% are developing quality standards specifically on how to gauge the success and effectiveness of their new online hybrid courses. So hopefully, again, 91% are also doing that.
Well, it's higher education, so most people, they want to find out what other people are doing first, and then once they have success,
so they're going to sit back and wait, and they're going to benchmark against other institutions of similar sizes, and then decide how to approach.
Well, it also could be a problem of who answered this survey. Obviously, if IT people answer this survey, or AV IT people, the numbers would be much different, and that 9% could be way higher. But if it's administrators who don't care about developing quality standards in AV in classrooms, they just know that it happens. Maybe they just didn't answer it properly.
Yeah, it just says a survey polled representatives, but I don't know
who's
a
representative, right?
Go ahead, Larry.
That kind of depends.
And when they say developing quality standards, I don't think of AV at all. I'm thinking of the student outcomes in the courses.
No, it would be pedagogy related. Absolutely,
a low number. I'm still glad somebody's thinking about that because all we've been hearing about is flexibility. The students want to take their classes when they want to take the classes. Institutions have a reputation to uphold, and somebody has to be looking out for that outcome, that the students who are going through the program are still getting the same end result, whether they're online or in person.
I think you proved my point that you can take these questions multiple ways, right? And depending on who you are and where your position is at the university.
I think it's the same thing in that first one, the 33% expanding online classes. Like, what online? Is that just online presence or true online e-learning experience where it fits into the e-campus silo of stuff? So it's like you can interpret that any different way.
And I think some of them are, if they already had I mean, most of our institutions already had, online curriculum for something, right? And so I think the focus here is not necessarily what they had, it's what they didn't have. Are they doing something different? So if they already had what we would have considered the traditional online, Canvas-based or LMS-based online school that you take whenever you want, whatever. But if now that, what's not defined, and we've already said that, we don't really know what some of these definitions are, but if they're looking at hybrid, some of them just said, screw that, we're not doing that at all. And so they're not expanding that. And then the ones that are, they're expanding online classes by adding this new modality, whatever that is. I find, like Chris said, I find the third thing, the 17% increase in flexibility to meet student demand, because that has been the most interesting statistic that I've seen thrown about all summer long before that. As we started to return to have these return plans, that it's almost a toss-up. There's this wide chasm. It's either the students really want it or the students really hate it. And
they want it when it's convenient for them. They don't want to only have to do that. They want to be able to pick and choose if possible.
And I think there's a lot of validity to that. And I wonder how the question was worded, but how they responded to the fact that I think the students have a point in what they're doing. And when you talk to students, many of them are like, look, I want to come back, but I want to come back for my level 300 and 400 courses because there's only 12 of us. And we really dig into the weeds, and it's the nerd stuff. It's basically our podcast, right? And it's just nerddom. We're here for fun, as weird as that sounds. But they go give two craps about English 101 and Chemistry 101 and Bio 101. They would much rather take it the other way, and the schools aren't seeing it that way sometimes. So it's just been that's been the most interesting number for me the whole time, because when I have an opportunity to speak to students, they really love kind of the new ways and the flexibilities, and I'm not hearing very many of, it sucked. But when you talk to administration, they're like, students say it sucks. What I think it is students' parents who are paying the check thinks it sucks, not necessarily the students. That's the number I want to see a year from now.
Yeah, I think the outcome is that there's some expansion. A quarter to a third will have some version of online access to content being used within the curriculum, whether that is real-time video and or just parking things in an LMS. There's going to be some expansion, so those invest accordingly and get your technologies aligned.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward a year from now seeing these surveys again and seeing which universities, which institutions, which ones grasped the good things that came out of the pandemic and said these are worthwhile to keep because it means tuition, it means money, it means flexibility, whatever. So I'm really interested to see what those numbers are 1 year from now. So we need to kind of bookmark this show and go back and see it a year from now and say, okay, look, these universities are finding success because they adapted. And these ones all thought it was 1950 again and went back to chalkboards. And lo and behold, their student dropped, right? And it'd be interesting. I don't know. That's the long-term studies on this whole thing is going to be more interesting than this one survey. But
it's in the show notes. We'll track it. We'll have the interns on that. They'll parse through all this data for it in the coming years, and we'll make sure that we'll get the staff working on it, and they'll crunch those numbers for us.
So, Jamie, you raised an interesting point, and I think it is probably the most prescient one of all these surveys. We've seen it a number of times. We need to watch it, but a lot of the flexibility and the requests are being driven by the demand for a different experience in the classroom based on what they've done for the last year and a half. So I think that'll be the interesting thing to watch. How many universities, institutions responded specifically for that reason? So,
and what you're also going to see is, some universities are going to respond slowly, and those metrics are going to be hard to track. Like, a university is going to look at this like, why are we losing students? Oh, it must be because of this, this, and this. And maybe it's because they're not offering English 100 only online or at any hour or whatever. They got to figure out the retention policies and why that's happening. So it could take a while for it to pan out?
Well, I think a lot of it's going to be the change between what they did over the last year and what they're doing this fall, and how that's going to play out. So we're gonna look at that specific thing here in a minute. But before we do that, Mark's going to push a button for us.
Believe it or not, this show is actually as disciplined as we get when talking about our industry. You'd like to hear more, let's say, unfiltered content from the AV Super Friends? Then head over to avsuperfriends.com and check out our other show, Off the Rails. Join Chris, Mark, Justin, Larry, Rachel, and I as we dig into the different aspects of higher ed AV. We'll also chat about pedagogy, swoon over the shiny new gadgets, and see what other interesting topics we pull out of the mailbag. That's Off the Rails, and found on our website at avsuperfriends.com.
All right, so returning to what we were just talking about here is like the focus this fall, I think, is going to be on this change in experience from what people were doing from the last year to what they're doing now as they return to classrooms. Is that's really the drive, I think, around the country. I think we'd all agree the drive right now is to return to some sense of normalcy and try to claw back to a pre-pandemic kind of college experience. But when people return to the classroom, they're going to find, while yes, we have upgraded their cameras and upgraded their microphones, and maybe they have better video systems and things, but for the most part, it's still functionally and physically the same sort of environment, of learning environment that was there before. So I'm curious, how people are going to respond to that. And Mark, you had posited that this is going to lead to what we're kind of calling the top help desk ticket of fall 2021 that you don't know is coming, but you're going to get a lot of them. Yep. So, why don't you talk about that for a bit?
Yeah, so I fast forwarded the times on all of our computers and went to our help desk pool, and I got some tickets from the future for you. They're dated October. I just wanted to kind of give you the things we're seeing, looking at the metrics. But I kind of lump these tickets into the concept of room control versus Zoom control, and being aware that life is different in the classroom than it was at your kitchen table, and the environmentals are different. And so we've already had folks who were teaching in hybrid modalities during the summer courses, and these are some of the things we've actually seen. Things like the cameras. Are your cameras in your rooms, where you do have them integrated into your whole switching system, video transport and control, versus being plugged in as USB in your room? Are all of your collaboration pieces configured to one central computer, or do you extend that to BYOD? And why is that camera not showing up on my laptop? I can't see it. And better yet, I want to share wirelessly in my classroom. So I went into the room and I selected document camera or Air Media or whatever it was, whatever my old methodology was. Why do I not see it in Zoom? And now I can't hear my students anymore. So the whole broader concept of the environmental / room AV control being completely decoupled to the at-home experience, and the new learning curve around that for faculty when they come back in. Some are pretty quick, but others are having a real hard time with it. If you haven't put some resources and some thought into that, I would say if you have a moment during this summer to at least think about how you will address this with faculty, if it's, training opportunities, whatever it may be, but you're going to see an onslaught of different tickets, items, whatever you want to call them, that are going to be related to this very topic. And I know you all probably have a variant of that. I want to kind of turn it over to the group. What other things should we be aware of when we kind of welcome back the folks into the room and they may or may not completely had forgotten what they used to have to do in a space?
When I have my Zoom hybrid class in this room, I get this weird echo from the students' Zooms that are in the room compared to the ones that are at home. Mm-hmm. But that's not what the ticket will say. The ticket will say, feedback, please help immediately.
No, it'll say, sound don't work.
Sound doesn't work good. Yep. And so, and that's that parallel experience, right? Students in the room having their laptops open, Zoom blasting away, and the instructor's like, it's just feeding back in the room. I don't know what's going on. So how do you unpack that, right? Are you there to support the instructor, or are you there to support the students now as well from your IT resources?
We've already had a few of those. So we had in-person classes this past semester, and people were trying to do that. And you all are right. You will get those tickets if you haven't had the hybrid classes yet. And we kind of have, to a point. It caused a few things to be upgraded quickly this summer. But our tickets are going to be different because we're worried about all those bad rooms that we didn't set anything up in that no one wanted to teach in anyway, that they're going to be forced to teach in now because everybody's teaching on campus and no one's looked at those rooms in over 2 years. Yeah. That's what we're worried about. So
just full of really, spiders and dust mites.
Yeah, I don't know what the hell they're going to walk into. But the good news is we had 160 projectors bought. We hired labor to help install those, and now it's my job to go around to see how many problems were left behind by this integrator. And I went through one building.
All the problems were left behind by the integrator. That's what they do.
Some of them were okay. It's like, I get it, but we'll maybe deal with that later because the room works. It's just not properly installed, but we'll get to that. So I'm trying to find problems before they're happening, but it took me a full day yesterday to go through one building, and I have
just getting keys, just getting access
14, 15 more. Oh, I spent an hour checking keys out of our key box. I'm not even going to get into that, but nonetheless, be proactive and put your hands on those rooms that haven't been touched in 2 years. Well, whatever technology's in there.
How about this one? Maybe you've seen this one, Larry. I'll let you go on this. The document cameras, visualizers, whatever you want to call them. Many of you probably have them connected via USB right now to your computers, and folks can share that in their online experience. But one that we keep getting is I've selected document camera as my source in the room, and now I can't hear anybody on Zoom, but people in the room can see the document camera, and I don't even know what people at home are even seeing now, right? And so they're doing what we trained them to do before the pandemic, but now since everything was coupled to the computer as our Zoom session or whatever it may be, you've now switched away from that to include the audio feed from the room itself. And so that one's been come up a few times now for us, and then once we say no, just kind of still build around your remote experience. So, but Larry, go ahead.
I think another thing we're going to find, and we were just like Justin, we were mainly high flex all last year. So we've had people here on campus, students here on campus, but there was still over half of our courses that just went online. So the professors who were here on campus, who wanted to have discussion-based pedagogy in their course, we were able to put them in rooms that would facilitate that kind of thing, to where, when we updated all of our rooms, we made some that the students in the back of the room could be picked up by the mics. Now that we've moved to 80%, 90% of our courses are back on campus, we're not going to have enough rooms that discussion-based pedagogy works in a high-flex environment. The majority of our spaces, probably 60%, are still primarily lecture capture, maybe the first couple of rows at most. So there's going to be a lot of teaching instructor guidance moments where we're not going to have rooms that will meet the way they want to teach in a high flex environment. It's just they're not set up for that. And that's the tickets I'm really worried about this fall.
I think most of the ones that we're trying to get on ahead of, and I would encourage most people to, is this kind of ties in with the document camera thing too. All of things that blend, that kind of merge between what the AV people do and what the computer support people do, whatever they're called. For instance, my camera is only the document camera, because for some reason, Zoom, Windows, Google, whichever software decided that the document camera was the primary camera and just chose it out of the list of USB devices. And how do they know which one to choose? Sound cards, in and outs, right? I get that comment a lot. Well, my sound sounds terrible because they're using the microphone on the document camera. Some of these things can't be hard set, but when it's reported, the ticket may sound like an AV problem, but it's not. Or vice versa. It really is a computer problem. Like, oh my God, the drivers in this latest update screwed up and I need... So now you have to have 2 tickets put in. And it's navigating that with your computer support people, saying or the help desk, so when you see this come in, please ask one more question.
Well, Jamie, it's a computer problem in a classroom, so thus it's a classroom problem.
Right.
Yep.
That's generally how they flag it.
Yeah, and that's why our support people are generic classroom computer support people, so they're going to get that ticket and see that, and they always think that the computer's a problem first, and then if they can't figure it out, they send it to the AV engineering group, so it kind of works itself out.
Yeah, for us,
you're lucky. I don't think the rest of us do.
Yeah, it's that we have that weird marriage of anything that's not inside the black box that says Dell on it. Anything that's not on the inside of it is my problem. Anything on the inside of it is their problem, and this is where
unless it's your problem.
That mishmash of
it's interpretation of kind of what the experience really is.
Is this for real? But it's just get out ahead of that, right? Talk to your if you don't have admin access in order to support computer related issues like that, then go ahead and talk to them so that you guys can be out in front of it. I guess that's where my point is. These are tickets that are going to pop up a lot more frequently than they did before.
This is the main reason why we reorged 3 or 4 years ago, and my department, we're responsible for all technology in a classroom, no matter what it is. So for better or worse, it works out in this situation.
Well, having lived on both sides of that, there's pros and cons to each. But it sounds like the vast majority of what we're talking about, and Mark, to your initial concept of the top help desk ticket that you don't know is coming, is this overall kind of dramatic change between a PC-focused teaching and learning experience, and everything goes into the computer somehow or is driven by the computer. And now, well, there's a computer in the room. It's the same. I still have microphones and audio. It's the same exact thing, but all that stuff is now driven by something outside the computer. And that level of interactivity and access and the enablement of it is all different now. And that's going to be the fundamental issue, is this interplay between the AV and the PC. And there's one thing I do want to bring up in relation to this is a bunch of us still have classrooms with these standard space H.323 codecs out there, and they can connect to a Zoom call or a Teams call or whatever, and they are universally terrible at doing that. So you're going to get those rooms, which used to be, if you think about it, 5 years ago, those were your best rooms, got those boxes. And now your best rooms are going to be the worst rooms because they don't do any of the stuff that an instructor or that a student in 2021 is going to want to do. Hey, I want to share my screen to the codec thing. Nope, not going to happen.
I'm in the room right now, Chris. I have my laptop open. I'm in Zoom. How do I get it to connect to this codec?
Yeah, and you're going to get how it always starts of those calls. So the rooms that your big complex rooms that have codecs in them, maybe just station someone in there now because you're going to need them. And if nothing else, it does kind of prove things that, and Mark, you and I have talked about this for years. We want to get rid of codecs, and my running joke is I offer a free service. I will remove that, place it in the dumpster, set the dumpster on fire, push it into the nearby river.
We have pictures.
That's a better place for codecs to live. Now, yes, someone right now is very angry at us, but that's fine. Codecs have their place. It is not in a standard classroom, and certainly not in a standard classroom in 2021. If nothing else,
where is their place? I want to know where their place is.
Holding the trash can down in the back.
If you have high critical and critical use environments where you need to be on calls or multiple calls throughout the day nonstop for hours and hours on end, then by all means that's what they're there for. But in most cases, I think we've all recognized, if nothing else, another silver lining from this pandemic is we've recognized that PC as the center, a computer-based, software-based video conferencing system has caught up and now surpassed, not just in quality but in functionality of these room systems. So we don't need that anymore. But they still do have their place, but it's very limited. To your comment there, Justin. There's that. The locations you can put those and make that justification, not just on cost, but on complexity and integration and all that stuff, is dramatically decreasing year after year after year to the point now where it's very small. You should be able to easily rattle off the 10 or 15 you have on your campus, not the 400 that you may or may not still have at IU. So I do also want to mention one other thing related to this, and Mark, you brought it up related to the codec, is that somebody's going to they're going to want to drive from their own computer. They're going to come in with their computer because that's what they've used for the last year and a half, and they're going to hook it up and try to figure all this stuff out. So with this new kind of Zoom hybrid Teams, whatever sort of online teaching hybrid model, BYOD is going to be terrible. So yes, I can show my screen and join the call, but the call has to be connected to something else. So look for that in your help desk calls. You're going to get calls that as we described before, it's going to be labeled incorrectly. The call is going to be the room doesn't work, or students can't hear me, or something, because they're trying to drive from their laptop, not the PC in the room, and they don't have the cameras and all that stuff. So go ahead, Larry.
And to follow up with that, Chris, make sure your racks are locked, because they will bring their own devices and try to unplug the USBs.
They'll find that USB cable.
Yes.
So I think in this whole concept, are any of you getting the sense, and people listening, let us know, are your universities and or organizations concerned about degraded experience upon the return because there may be this new layer of interactive technology they have to kind of go through and learn, and it wasn't the same, and they just learned all the stuff at home? And are we at least acknowledging that it might be tricky and it could lead to a degraded student experience in the classroom? Don't know. I'd like to see some polling on that. If the pollsters are out there, if you're listening to this, park on the side of the road, put together, jot down some notes, get me a poll started, and send it out.
You may not realize that until the end of this coming semester. So maybe we should repolster them.
Well, I think you're exactly right, Mark, that a lot of people are focused so much on let's do what we can to get people back to campus. Let's return to that pre-pandemic college experience, not realizing that, well, that's fine, but fundamentally some of the teaching and learning methods have changed. And if they're expecting that, but now back on campus, and they can't do that, or they have trouble with it, or they're going to get pissed. I mean, we've heard this for years. The comment, you're testing a room or something, you bump into an instructor or professor, and they say, no, are you guys fixing this room? I'm like, oh yeah, we're working on this, that, and the other. And they say, yeah, because it's never worked. Like, what do you mean it's never worked?
It's always worked for me.
It's always worked, but what they're trying to do or how they're trying to do it isn't working for them. Thus, they're having a bad experience in the space. So to them, it is broken. So we're going to see that, but I think en masse, you're going to see that large scale this fall with people trying to do, well, like you said, I was in my dining room and I did this, and I had a little extra camera and I had this thing, and I'm going to hook all this stuff up. Oh, all the stuff's already in the classroom. It doesn't work. It's broken. Well, is it? But at the same time, get out in front of that. So
yeah, but faculty are really aware of any downtime in that space. A minute fumbling with technology in front of 50 grimacing faces is an eternity, right? And so, and that reflects on their post-term kind of assessments from their students. They see that. We've seen that now when faculty have problems with technology, it comes out in those assessments on there. And so my guess is somewhere there has to be some level of acknowledgement that there may be some struggles with faculty as they return with technology, because it's going to be a different experience.
And at the same time, they're going to want to try to do I was going to say improvements, maybe not improvements, but the change in teaching modality that they've done over the last year. And some of them are going to be successful, and it's not going to work at all. And they will blame everybody but their own responsibility for it. They're going to blame it on the classrooms and the technology.
Yeah, but I want to be. They're
going to blame you personally.
Really careful too on some of this, because I want like I strive to those instructors that come in and are trying to embrace new technologies or new ways of reaching their students and are frustrated and pissed off because it's always been broke, because I agree that is a frustration. How do we get to them and say, hey, wait, I think you'll be surprised what it can do. Let's chat.
Yeah. And
embrace that. Don't just, I know most of us on this call try to do this anyway. If you've heard some of our pedagogy podcasts, we're really big fans of that. Use our stuff. That's why we put it there. But don't be so discouraged by some of them because they say it's broke, it sucks, it's stupid, I want to do this thing and it can't.
That's the cry for help.
Maybe reach out, take 10 minutes and embrace the idea that they want to use your technology. And because that's, after all, why we're employed.
Well, it's also a fantastic opportunity to reach out to your and through your what your Center for Teaching and Learning or whatever the instructional design group is, because they're going to need, a lot of these instructors are going to need pedagogical and curriculum development help. And how do we really leverage this new model of teaching, because as we talked about in the first segment there, this is all going to be driven by students. The students are going to demand this, and some of them are going to demand it actively and to your face, and some are going to demand it passive aggressively by taking other courses or going to other institutions. So it's an opportunity to say the new model is going to be this flexible hybrid sort of multimodal delivery system, leveraging technology so everyone can participate and you have equity of experience whether you're in the room or remote. How do we best adapt not just the rooms to do that, not just the spaces, not in the technology, but also the curriculum, and make sure it's going to match for everybody?
I would say just kind of the last piece of this from my perspective is find your champions too. The ones that come in and do it well, like you're going to be amazed with how much is going to change in the next year. The ones who come in and adopt to it and actually take it on and do it and figure out how to make the most of it, they're going to change your perspective of what you should be providing in a standard classroom. So I'm actually really excited as this year unfolds to find out what are the things that are working really well that we should really focus on, double down on. What are the things do we not need to really focus on, and kind of what is the best of this new experience, and let this actually play out and let the champions drive that decision-making process as we move forward.
Which reminds me, years ago when I worked for the instructional design group as their sysadmin, we used to put together these groups of faculty champions who were all kind of working on new technologies, and we called them scholars learning communities, and they would kind of self-support, but also was to be used as examples. And we always tried to get people from different disciplines around campus, but it was to use them as examples to say, hey, here's one of your colleagues doing this. If you have questions, the person is right down the hall and they teach something very similar to what you teach, and you can ask them about this, and that will help to build that. So at the time, this was almost 20 years ago, this was trying to get people to build, hey, put together an online, presence for your course, put together a Blackboard kind of shell for it. The idea, because that was going to be something just to deliver course material. But I think there's a good opportunity here to do something similar, to find those champions, to find ones from multiple disciplines. So somebody in every college, in every department, there's someone down the hall or around the corner who's teaching something similar, and they're being successful with it in one of those our teaching spaces on campus. So. All right, so that's your top tip from the AV Super Friends. That is your number one help desk ticket that is coming this fall. You're going to get a lot of them. You don't know it's coming, but now you do. So get out there in front. Some opportunities to reach out to people to ensure the spaces are all operating to their optimum. And Justin, you brought it up. These are spaces that some of us haven't been into for 2 years. It's full of cobwebs and giant rats. But I think, and Jamie, I think this was your suggestion, but maybe before we close out here, why don't you talk about the UMKC model for kind of preventive maintenance, and then we can kind of go through that and see how the rest of us handle it.
Yeah, it was kind of it was something that came up in one of our discussions, just in our little group discussions. Like, well, we haven't even been in these rooms in 2 years. I'm like, well, I mean, we've been checking. We check them. We try to hit. In our department, we have people that come in at 5:30 in the morning. There's a couple of part-timers and 2 full-timers. The part-timers do most of the work. The full-timers are there to fix whatever problems they find. But we try to be in every single classroom or AV space at least twice a week. It's quite a few, right? Some days you get 3. Sometimes we get 3 times a week. Sometimes we get twice, depending on how many issues they find. But just that simple fact of having folks come in early, you find that the batteries need to be replaced, or something needs to be recharged, or we have a lamp that's about to fail, or maybe this room had a network whoopsie and needs to be rebooted. And we find a lot of those kind of things. And in particular, that Monday morning, because like in our campus, they try to push a lot of the Windows updates over the weekend. So that, and then they flush the login caches on Sunday night. So that Monday morning, that first time you boot up a computer, takes forever. But if we have our system checks go through and they've already booted that computer, it's already got its updates. It's ready to rock and roll for that first class at 8 o'clock. And by the time, it's been mornings where I roll in at 7:30, 8 o'clock for my shift. It's pretty flexible. I might already have 3 or 4 tickets that I've got to go try to address that are like tier 2 and 3 tickets, because we have a class at 9. But we already knew, because we have people there. We did have Global Viewer running for a while, but what we found is that it misses the stupid stuff. Mm-hmm. It misses the fact that somebody was mad at the webcam, so they knocked it off the back and it actually, ripped the cable out of it. It misses the keyboard has a broken space bar. it doesn't get to see all that. But if you have a person in there, and it is a little bit of a logistical nightmare. But what we have found is, like with part-timers, students in particular work really well there, because 5:30 to 9 in the morning, some of them get to have half a day of work. They can go to class and still have a night job, and they get to make some bank on it, and it's an easy time to do it.
Nice. We have a similar thing. We have students staffed at our support desk, and I wanted to ask you the question: is that, we're out there hitting them a couple times a week, if we can, at least one time a week. Students and their schedule, and the logistics of that is crazy. We're doing it during the actual term, during business hours, and so our students are diving in, diving out. But it's the same staff that are at our support desk. And I wanted to ask you: are these different staff members, or are they there also working in that support role? Because I think you can have a list, but are they actually really intimate with that support process and know what to look for?
Yeah, yes and no. They're kind of because their hours are restricted so far, 5:30 to 9. They don't really stay there for the rest of the support time. The full-time people that start at 5:30, they're there till 2, and they are a regular AV install / support / whatever crew, right? That are responding to the tickets. They're the ones that are basically responsible for break fix. The part-timers are just responsible to find what's broken and the easy repair. And they're all given, we had a web interface for a long time, and they were all given a one of those netbook things. And they just walk around in every room. They say, I went to 313, no problem found. 314, no problem found. 315, needed batteries. And it just goes through the thing. Need to reboot. So, no, they are not. But we try to train them and to take some ownership of that, like, not even tier 1 response, a little bit less than that. But
tier half.
We try to get there.
Tier 0, man. Self.
Yeah.
But that's the stuff that takes up a lot of time, right? That's the stuff that people get really pissed off when there's no batteries for the microphone. Mm-hmm. They don't care that the computer's broken. There's no batteries for the microphone. Yeah. And that's an easy fix, right?
So this is super interesting. So we only do proactive room checks on our Zoom rooms, or used to be codec rooms, like an actual Zoom room. Every other standard classroom, even if it has a camera and microphone, we don't do proactive room checks on. But in the room checks, they call back to our support desk, do a full call back and forth, check all technology, and then they move on to the next one. So it's interesting that we put so much effort into making sure these Zoom rooms are working, but they only make up a small percentage of our total fleet. So it's goes back to resources.
Yeah, I'd love to have our people hit the rooms once a week. That would be great. Right now, we do full room checks before the start of every semester. And the reason we do that is kind of what Jamie was saying about GVE, which we have running, can't find all the issues. Like, it just says, hey, this room's offline. Anything beyond that, there's a difference between qualitative and quantitative checking. And that's the big thing I keep pushing with my team is I don't care if the projector is showing an image. I want to make sure it's the right image, that the resolution is right.
The blue screen looks great.
Yeah, I want to make sure
no
it's
signal.
focused.
What do you want?
Like, all this stuff that goes into, does the room work well?
Right.
Really affects the learning environment.
And sometimes you just need a human to go in there and get that information. And you can't measure what you don't know, right? You can't manage it. At least you got to have something to measure.
Yeah, I think that's the most important point. I think I'd love to have every space touched once a week would be great. Every other week is probably acceptable, but it's being touched by a human, and it's a human who knows the systems. Like you said, Jamie, maybe call that tier half. It's they're not quite tier 1, but they know enough about it. And it's more importantly, it's somebody you can trust. When they say, hey, this wasn't working, I tried this and that and the other, and it's still not working, that's, I think, a legitimate report, as opposed to, as we've described, instructors going in the room space and just saying, I don't know, it's all broken. It's never worked, sort of thing. But if somebody's in there once a week, once every other week, and at least you're getting this partial report on something was happening. Hey, the audio sounded weird. There was like this crackling noise. Like, okay, I trust this person. That's a legit issue. We can go in and look at that, as opposed to somebody's cable was loose on their laptop or something. So I think we all strive to get into the spaces more often than we'd like. I think of all the places I've worked, which has been a lot of them, UMKC, I think, does it best by having people in there early and in there almost every day, if not every day, because at least you're getting that light touch. The batteries are getting swapped out. You can catch some of those problems early and knock some of them out, the low-hanging fruit before it becomes an issue for that first class of the day. Some places have the resources to do that. Others not so much, but it's something we can all make the effort to try to improve that. So, well, I would say we've done a real quick overview here of what you're going to run into this fall. So, be prepped, reach out to people, check your rooms ahead of time. I sure hope people aren't going in and finding a room full of dust bunnies and cobwebs.
Go touch your rooms.
Get out there.
Go touch all your rooms. They like it.
Yep. Qualitative.
And we'll be back next month. Thanks for putting up with yet another episode of AV SuperFriends On Topic. You can contact us with questions, topic ideas, or general complaints at avsuperfriends.com.
Nice work, everyone. Sharp broadcast. Really good. Everyone on the floor as well. Really a lot of hustle. I liked it.
The opinions expressed by the AV SuperFriends are solely those of the individuals and do not represent their respective institutions, organizations, companies, or clients.